1.
Welcome inside the CEC TV studios for another edition of Trailblazer Weekly. As always, I'm your host, Carrick Segmiller, alongside DSU broadcast media student James Guerin, and we've got a loaded show for you today.
Right you are, Carrick. Today we've got all the results from last week, mixed in with some highlights from Saturday. Later in the show, we'll hear from women's basketball head coach J.D. Gustin as the Trailblazers open their season later this week in Oregon. I
told you it was a loaded show today, so let's get right to it. Trailblazer Weekly starts now. Again, welcome inside this week's edition of Trailblazer Weekly. It was a busy week last week, and we've got all the results and highlights to help get you caught up on all things Trailblazer athletics. We start the show today on the cross-country course as the men's and women's cross-country teams wrapped up their seasons at the 2017 NCAA Division II West Regional Championships in Monmouth, Oregon. Both teams posted solid marks in Oregon. Let's start with the women's team. Skylar Story posted a team best mark on the women's side, finishing in 75th place with a time of 22:49.3. Lainey Wells finished just behind Story in 77th place with a time of 22:50.8. Overall, the women's team finished in 17th place with a total team time of 1:56.20. Again, great showing for the women's team in Oregon. On to the men's side, Hunter Chamberlain led the way on the men's side, finishing in 56th place with a time of 31:40.4. With that time, Chamberlain set the new program 10K record, breaking his own mark from the 2015 West Regional. Overall, the men's team finished in 21st place with a total team time of 2:44.2. Great showings for the men's and women's cross-country teams at the West Regionals in Oregon.
To the volleyball court now. After a thrilling 5-set victory at Point Loma on Saturday, the Trailblazers opened their final 3-game homestand of the season on Monday with a 3-0 win over Hawaii Hilo inside the Student Activity Center. Dixie State jumped out to a 2-0 lead with dominating performances in the first 2 sets, taking a 25-16 victory in set 1, followed by a 25-9 triumph in set 2. And things got a little interesting in set 3 as the Vulcans took a 21-18 lead late in the set, but the Trailblazers would not be denied the victory and rallied for the victory, outscoring the Vulcans 7-2 to take a 25-23 win in set 3 for the victory. Dixie State improves to an 11-13 overall record and 9-7 in Pac West play with its final 2 matches of the season on Saturday and Sunday. We move to the swimming pool now as the women's swimming team headed to Fairbanks, Alaska for its second dual meet of the season on Friday and Saturday. After making the long trek, the Trailblazers stayed close for most of the weekend, but eventually fell 243 to 167 to Alaska Fairbanks. Dixie State tallied 4 event wins and broke 3 school records at its 2-day dual meet this weekend at Alaska Fairbanks. UAF combined to outscore the Trailblazers by a 243-167 margin to claim the meet win. Sophomore Hannah Hansen accounted for 2 of DSU's 4 wins and all 3 new records at the meet, including wins in the 400-yard individual medley and the 200 breaststroke. She also broke her own 100 breaststroke record with the second-place time of 107.79. Dixie State will return to action on November 30th in Grand Junction, Colorado for the Colorado Mesa A3 Performance Invitational.
To the football field now as the Trailblazers hosted number 24 CSU Pueblo on Saturday with an opportunity to keep its hopes of a winning season alive. Dixie State stayed within a touchdown in the first half after A.J. Jurgensen nailed a career-long 40-yard field goal to cut the lead to 10-3, but the Thunderwolves outscored the Trailblazers 21-7 in the second half to claim a 31-10 win. Blake Barney scored the lone Dixie State touchdown in the second half after the Trailblazers mounted a season-long 17-play touchdown drive, but the Thunderwolves defense would not break again as CSU Pueblo held Dixie State to a season-low 168 yards of total offense. It's time for a quick break. When we come back, we'll recap last week's men's and women's soccer as well as men's basketball results. We're back to Trailblazer Weekly right after this timeout.
I take the road less traveled, run free, unwind, unravel, someplace outside with lots to do. Green trees, red rocks, and don't forget that blue sky. The sunshine shining, sunshine pouring on me. Think I might just stay a while. Say hooray all day because the sun is gonna shine on me. Sun is gonna shine on me. Sun's gonna shine on me.
Welcome back to Trailblazer Weekly. Our Trailblazer Rewind look back continues as we head to the soccer pitch. The men's soccer team hosted Azusa Pacific on Saturday, the 2017 season finale, and there was no shortage of goals. The teams combined for 7 goals as the Trailblazers ended the season with a 5-2 win. Got the highlights. Let's take a look at those now. You see them on your screen. APU struck first just less than 4 minutes into the match, but literally 20 seconds later, Dominic D'Amato scores to tie the game at 1-1, and with that, the Dixie State scoring onslaught was on. About a little over 35 minutes later, Christian Hall scores his 3rd goal of the season, put Dixie State up 2-1 in the 39th minute. Into the second half we go with Dixie State leading 2-1. It'll be Yondir Porta dribbling from the left wing, finishing into the right side of the net to give Dixie State the 3-1 lead. I told you it was a goal-scoring frenzy. Brian Baugh, you see there on your screen, heading in his 2nd goal of the season from Blake D'Amato to make it a 4-1 game. APU would pull one back in the 77th minute to make it 4-2. The Dixie State would strike last to make it a 5-2 game. You see Alexis Beza dribbling into the box. He's taken down from behind. He would be awarded a penalty kick, and he would make it count. He would make sure he would get his scoring account open for the season, scoring his first and only goal of the season on a penalty kick in the 79th minute to give the Dixie State Trailblazers the 5-2 victory. That would be your final tally. Dixie State now finishes the season with a 12-5 overall record and an 8-5 mark in Pac West play. Good enough for 5th place in the conference.
To the women's soccer now, as the Trailblazers also hosted Azusa Pacific on Saturday in the final match of their season. Dixie State would strike first early in the match, but the Cougars responded with 2 first-half goals to claim a 2-1 victory. We've got the scoring highlights for you, so let's roll those on the tape right now. Early on in the first 10 minutes of the match, Tori Page strikes one from way out there to get the Trailblazers their first lead of the half. About 5-6 minutes later, Stephanie LaSalle awarded this off of a handball, so she gets the opportunity to get her first penalty kick opportunity, and she sails this one in the top right corner to tie this one up in the first 15 minutes of the match. And just 6 minutes later, the Cougars are striking again, and there it is, LaSalle once again getting her team the lead for the first time in this one, and that's going to be it for all the highlights, as it is a 2-1 victory. And the Trailblazers close the season with a 12-6 overall record and an 8-5 mark in Pac West play.
We wrap up our look back with men's basketball now. Yes, believe it or not, basketball season is already upon us. The Trailblazers opened the season with 2 exhibitions last week, heading first to Division I Utah Valley in Orem. Dixie State battled but fell 71-60 at UVU, and a good showing for them, then headed back to the comfy confines of the Burns Arena for a Friday night exhibition with Division III Whittier College. Dixie State opened an early lead and never looked back, cruising to a 102-64 win in the exhibition. 7 Trailblazers finished in double figures, led by 15 points by Brandon Simister. The team shot 44% from the field in that game. Against 7 Trailblazers in double figures, it was a great performance for them. Dixie State will officially open the season with 3 games this weekend in California. Very tough slate to open the season. Cal Poly Pomona on Friday, followed by UC San Diego in a rematch of last year's NCAA regional game on Saturday. They stay the weekend. They'll play Cal State LA on Monday. It's time for our next break. When we come back, we'll hear from women's basketball coach J.D. Gustin as the Trailblazers prepare to make some noise in the new season. Don't go anywhere. There's a lot more Trailblazer Weekly right after this timeout.
Todd's a great guy. I mean, look at him. What a sweetheart. Attaboy. Wait. Todd, what are you doing? How totally selfish and un-Todd-like of you. Come on, Todd. Come on, man.
Your daughter is having trouble learning French. Do you A, hire a tutor?
Bonjour.
B, enforce a French-only rule at home? Or C, watch some foreign films? When it comes to parenting, there are no perfect answers, but that's okay, because you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Daisy is 6 years old, and she is my very best friend. I couldn't live alone without her. I spend a lot of time in my backyard. I feed the birds and the bees. I love my flowers. The color in my garden keeps the pink in my cheeks. I was very independent and thought I could take care of myself. I fell and I had to have Meals on Wheels. I love them. They're my savior. And I look forward to volunteers because they've all become my friends. My name is Lola Silvestri. America, let's do lunch.
1 in 6 seniors faces the threat of hunger, and millions more live in isolation. Drop off a hot meal and say a quick hello. Volunteer by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org.
Welcome back inside Trailblazer Weekly. Like we mentioned in the previous segment, basketball season is already upon us. The women's basketball team will head to Oregon this weekend for its first 2 games of the season. A couple of weeks ago, I had a chance to sit down with head coach J.D. Gusson to discuss the upcoming season and this year's team in a weekly segment we're doing with them called Dixie State Women's Basketball Weekly. It was a great sit-down chat, and figured it would work perfectly to be able to run this back during Trailblazer Weekly and let you know what the coaches are thinking at this point as we head into the new season. So let's roll that now. My sit down with head coach J.D. Gusson from a couple of weeks ago. This week's edition, obviously, a season preview. The regular season just a couple of weeks away, looming on the horizon. So, Coach, let's break things down and let's start. I always like to start kind of with a quick look back, maybe not necessarily at deep in look, an in-depth look at last season, but into the off season. And let's talk about this year's recruiting class. You go out and you bring in 5 really talented freshmen. You bring in a Division II transfer from BYU Hawaii, and you bring in a junior college transfer from Utah State Eastern. Just talk about this year's recruiting class, really your first true recruiting class with this team.
Yeah, we're really excited about it, Carrick. To win 5 games and have the tough year that we did, and then to be able to bring in arguably the best recruiting class that Dixie State's had in its D2 history. We're thrilled about it. Our 5 freshmen, not only are they talented, fantastic people, and they're winners. They all won their region title. I don't know their combined record as seniors, but it's really good.
Real good.
And then the addition of Kristen, it is a big deal. She was an all-league player in this league last year, and she's gotten better and starting to get comfortable. She's going to be a big piece for us. And then Miley also was a fantastic sign for us. Another local Utah kid that's just gotten so much better in her time at junior college, and is going to play a significant role for us. So super excited about our class.
Of course, we can talk a lot about the new players that are joining the squad this year, but you bring back 5 really talented players from last year as well. Let's talk about those players. You've got Termina Jordan and Ashley Burge, Gabby Cabanero, Maddie Ventling, Lisa Van Kampen, all players that were integral parts of what we were able to do last year. So let's talk about what they bring to the table and how big of a part they'll play in this year's team.
Well, I'm excited about that group that we have coming back, because now they understand what we're trying to do, the expectations that we have, the culture that we're trying to build. They understand the importance of leadership, and we had very little leadership last year, and starting with me, so I'm not picking on them, but and so Lisa's going to redshirt. And she's really had a great summer. She's improved tremendously. So we won't have her, but we're still expecting her to lead. And then the other 4, we're going to ask to contribute significantly. So I think they all had a good summer, and they're excited about it. And we're trying to do something different here, something special, and they get that, and they're helping.
You've got the 6 games, the count in the win-loss column, plus the exhibition at Utah State before the Pac-West schedule starts that first weekend in December. Obviously, wins and losses. A lot of people will look at that and as a measuring stick. What else are you trying to see through those first 6 games before Pac-West play begins?
Well, we're just trying to find an identity. That's the tough part about starting a program, or not, I shouldn't say starting a program, trying to rebuild a program and rebuild a culture. We don't have an identity at all, and so hopefully going to use the preseason to find who and what we are, and establish, some ways to do things, and hopefully do them correctly in the way that we want to do them, and then attack this tough league. It's a challenging league. It's full of good players, full of good coaches, and we'll see what we can do against it.
Big thanks to head coach J.D. Gustin for sitting down with me a couple of weeks ago. It certainly looks to be an exciting season. Can't wait to see this team get out on the floor. Again, they're going to be young, like Coach Gustin said, but some really talented freshmen bringing in some good players, and then some great players coming back from last season as well. It's time to take our final break. When we come back, we'll take a look ahead at next week's schedule. Stick with us. There's more after this timeout.
I take the road less traveled, run free, unwind, unravel, someplace outside with lots to do. Green trees, red rocks, and don't forget that blue sky. The sunshine shining, sunshine pouring on me. Think I might just stay a while. Say hooray all day because the sun is gonna shine on me. Sun, it's gonna shine on me. Sun's gonna shine on me.
Everything starts out small. The things that hurt us, they all start from somewhere. The words we say, the things we do, they can grow into something else. What was small and innocent can become big and sometimes scary. All it takes is one comment, one picture, one video for something to catch fire. But a big problem doesn't need a big response. Not at first. Even if we don't know what to say, the eye emoji can be that first step we take. Let's all pledge to take that first small step together.
So we're going to come back on 3.
Can
you guys hear me? We'll come back on 3.
And so
I'll
are
do
you.
the schedule. After I'm wrapping up the schedule, let's go back to 2. We'll wrap up the show on 2.
Okay.
Sound good? Okay. So, as soon as I'm done here, you're there because you'll talk, and I'll talk. This will be fun. And really paying attention to see my stack of papers get smaller.
7, 6, 5, 3.
Welcome back inside the CEC TV studios one final time inside this week's edition of Trailblazer Weekly. Before we wrap up the show today, let's take a quick look ahead at this week's schedule. And as always, feel free to follow along on your screen as we show you what is in store the next week in Trailblazer Athletics. You see the start there on Friday. Basketball season is here, ladies and gentlemen. The ball is bouncing in the gym. The men's basketball team will open things up first as they head down to Pomona, California. A very tough slate for the men's basketball team on hand as they open their season on Friday at Cal Poly Pomona. This is a team that has knocked Dixie State out of the NCAA tournament a couple of times over the last 10 years. They'll be looking to try and get some revenge for some of those losses on Friday. Moving into Saturday, pretty busy day, but all on the road. Football will travel to Fort Lewis for a noon Mountain Time kickoff against the Skyhawks. It'll be the final football game of the season. Volleyball later in the day, or right at noon at the same time, the lone home match of the afternoon for this upcoming schedule. We'll host Azusa Pacific on Saturday at noon inside the Student Activities Center. Continuing with Saturday, the women's basketball team will open up their season at Western Oregon. That game will tip at 3 p.m. Utah time, and then later on in the evening, the men's basketball team will take on UC San Diego at Pomona, California in a rematch of the first round game against UC San Diego in last year's NCAA Division II West Regional. And then moving into the rest of the weekend on Sunday, volleyball will host Academy of Art in the final game of the 2017 season. That match will start at noon Mountain Time, and then women's basketball will wrap up their weekend trip to Oregon and against St. Martin's in Monmouth. That game will tip at 1 p.m. Mountain Time into Monday, and the men's basketball team will wrap up their trip in Los Angeles, taking on Cal State LA. That game will tip 6 p.m. Utah time on Monday. And that just about does it for the look ahead. Women's basketball will stay on the road, and they will finish up their trip on Tuesday at Utah State in Logan, Utah. That will tip at noon on Tuesday up in Logan.
That will do it for today's show. We remind you that you can catch all episodes of Trailblazer Weekly on demand on the Dixie State Athletics YouTube page, specifically at youtube.com/Dixie State Athletics.
Right you are, James. You can watch the show anytime, anywhere on the Dixie State Athletics YouTube page. For James and the entire CEC TV crew, I'm Carrick Segmuller. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Trailblazer Weekly.